Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, I'm going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Joey Graceffa in regards to the Gabbie Hanna controversy that has recently sparked up. This is a follow-up to the first half of this video, so if you haven't seen the portion where I analyze Gabbie Hanna's video, then I suggest you go and do that because this is going to be kind of riding off of that. More on that in a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. So I've watched a number of Joey's videos and I have a decent idea as to how his baseline functions, some of his normal nonverbal behaviors to be able to help make this read a little bit more accurate. On the accuracy of any read that you see here on the internet, anybody who is watching a video is limited in that they cannot interact with the person, so I am limited as well. Along with that, nonverbal communication reading is on average 70 to 80% accurate, and you can push that more and more accurate, but due to those limitations, we're going to be looking probably somewhere in that 75, maybe up to 90% accuracy range, depending on how well this goes. So I wanted to be able to offer that as a disclaimer. Also, as in all of my videos, none of these are to be used as legal evidence in any way. They are only for informational and entertainment purposes at best. So just keep that in mind. I think that's enough of the disclaimers, and like I said, if you haven't watched the other video, go and watch that, and that'll be your background. Let's go ahead and dive into this video itself.
But before we get into those points, I do want to let you guys know that Gabbie and I were close friends. So when she asked...
Okay, something that I will say, one, this isn't the full video that Joey did. You can go and watch his full video. It's a little bit longer than this. This is just kind of boiled down a little bit. Also, I haven't seen this. I have no idea what he's going to say, so I'm going to be seeing this at the same time as you. I'm relying on my prior knowledge of his baseline to be able to work in this video, so hopefully that will lend towards that accuracy that I mentioned. Speaking on the setting that he's in here, it doesn't look like he's gone out of his way to make anything look a specific way to help manipulate his audience. That's good to be able to see all the way down to his dress. He seems to be just sitting down to record a response video. That's good news, honestly. And let's go ahead and dive into what he's actually saying, the content itself.
Like the victim and is wondering why all these people in her life who claim to be her friends are no longer her friends. You do things, Gabbie, to make people not be your friends. What you did to me on Escape the Night is the reason we are no longer friends and the reason why I talked badly about you being on Escape the Night. Just because we were friends before that doesn't contractually make me obligated to never say anything bad about you or never not be your friend because we were friends in the past. You did this. You ended our friendship, not me. The way that you acted on set of Escape the Night is why we are no longer friends. And if you want to...
So during this time, he is using a lot of affirmation head nods, and that's synchronized with what he is saying. Along with that, his gestures are flowing quite nicely. Now, I know that Joey has been on a platform for a while, and he's been in front of a camera a fair amount, so that's going to help with all of his nonverbal communication to be more fluid. That doesn't mean that he's going to be necessarily better at lying or covering up anything while being more fluid. It just means that he's going to come across more comfortably. That's showing up here quite clearly. That being said, as I said... All things are being said. Everything is synchronized right now. That is good to be able to see for authenticity. It's harder to be synchronized, fully synchronized, if you're being deceitful. We don't know that he's being deceitful or authentic quite yet. It's only a few seconds in, so let's see what happens.
Example of what a friend is like on set of a production of your friend. Take some advice from Colleen, who literally gave birth months before, showed up on set, was breastfeeding, went home after hours on set to her baby waking up and then having to be a mom and then coming to set the next day and doing it all over again. Meanwhile, you, who's all...
I'm gonna go ahead and pause that there. A lot of respect to that woman. That is an extremely intense thing to do. That's dedication, and that is being very respectful. I don't even know that if I were in her position, the woman who was pregnant, I don't know that I would have gone back. That's an extremely exhausting ordeal. So kudos to that woman. And I think he's about to start talking about Gabbie's contrast to that.
Also, my friend is making life on set a living hell by being disrespectful and rude and mean and foul to not only cast.
Okay, so a few things are happening here. While he's talking about Gabbie being his friend, you could see a little bit of action in his corners of his nose here, right in this area, and that is an indicator of disgust, which would be in relation to Gabbie. He's speaking of Gabbie. The disgust is slipping out just a little bit, and that does make sense emotionally compared to their relationship that they had before the show. So that does make sense in that front. And then continuing on from that, he has a little bit more aggression come in with the rest of his face, with the lowered eyebrows, and then also with the enunciation that he's using here while saying things like foul. You could see the aggression come across the rest of his face. He is angry, and from what I can understand from the context of this entire situation, pretty rightfully so. Let's continue.
But crew screaming at the director, demanding things, and calling a production assistant a dumb cunt is not how you act on set of one of your friends. Not even just your friend, any set in general. That's not how you act, regardless.
You can hear his pitch increasing and his tone increasing. This is an indicator of an increase in agitation. He's becoming more frustrated as he's talking about what Gabbie had done before. Now, what's important for us and what's important to me as an analyst is that he's maintaining synchronization throughout this. There's no point where he's becoming more loud with his gestures but still maintaining soft tones, or more loud with his tones and still maintaining soft gestures, so on and so forth. That synchronization still exists. This pushes us towards the direction of authenticity rather than deceit. Let's continue watching.
Regardless of your mental health issues, this is not how you act, okay? And that is why we are not friends, Gabbie. And that is why I don't like you. It's because of...
This is the classic forced fake smile that he's portraying during this time. The smile is technically reaching his eyes, but you feel it as a viewer. You can feel that it is not genuine. You could see just a little bit of crinkling in his eyes, but just because a person's eyes crinkle doesn't mean that their smile is being authentic. You could still feel that this is an off smile, and the reason is because just because a person's eyes crinkle, that they can physically make them crinkle, it doesn't mean that they are actually smiling genuinely. And that's something that we can pick up on subconsciously. Intuitively would be another way to say that, but what it is it's a different set of muscles that are being activated during an experience of genuine joy or happiness as opposed to a polite smile. So we're seeing a polite smile or a forced smile or a fake smile. Any smile that's not genuinely based out of happiness is fake. So that's what we're seeing from him. And that's understandable. He's not trying to convince us that he's super, super happy. So that just is something that we're understanding non-verbally from him. Let's continue.
What you did to me. You are not a friend. That is not how a friend acts. That's just not my definition of a friend. Okay, number one,
So there are some cuts in his video. He's not apologizing for anything, so the cuts in this don't really matter as much to me. Cut as much as you like as long as you're not apologizing. He is still seeming to be fairly organic with that, and then that one part here where it's got a cut and then another cut, he is pretty small in the frame here, and I don't think that there's too much into that, especially considering the rest of the context. He seems to be sitting that way fairly regularly. So it's not out of the ordinary, it's sticking more with his baseline that he's also establishing here. So that's just something else that we're learning and understanding about him. The goal with this is to be able to compile more and more nonverbal information about him so that by the end of the video, we hopefully have an idea as to what we're feeling in this sort of situation. So let's continue forward.
once started this. Gabbie thinks that I'm the one who started this. During interviews and stuff, people asked me like what it was like on set or what was season 4 like, and I was honest. I said it was awful because one person in particular was awful and made it awful, but I never once said your name, Gabbie.
And only
I think this is true. It seems as though he's skipping off here, but from what he's shown non-verbally, I would actually believe that he does have some areas where he increases in tone. And like I said, that's an indicator of agitation or an indicator of increased emotion. So in this area, it does seem to be more logically played out as an increase in agitation, which this could mean that maybe he didn't say her name to anybody in an interview. But it does seem as though he probably used her name in more private settings from just the little tiny blip of nonverbal stuff that we saw there.
only one out of all 4 seasons someone like had an issue with dying.
Oh, there was one in season 4 too.
Really?
Sure. Yeah, that was season 4 was my least favorite to film by far.
Why?
Just because
Drama.
of this one person on the cast who just made it hell.
Really? And how do you stay out of like not talking about drama? You never talk about things. I would call people out left, right, and center.
No, honestly, I could have, and I could have like exposed a lot of receipts, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I don't put out that energy.
People were able to figure out who it was based off your past actions. it wasn't hard for people to connect the dots because you've set the standard of who you are online. So that was...
So you can see by the tension in his face, it is a partial grimace, which is a mixture of a whole slew of different emotions. I don't want to unpack what a grimace is. I'll just let you go off of your prior experience with grimaces. But that does make sense, and frankly, it wasn't surprising to me, even as a person who did watch YouTube well before I actually did YouTube stuff. It didn't surprise me that it was Gabbie that was causing problems. And I mentioned this in the last video, Joey's not the only one who has called out Gabbie during this situation. There are other people who have come forward saying that Gabbie was a problem causer on the set. And if you watch the last video, that does actually come forward as more genuine, despite Gabbie trying to excuse herself from it. Go watch the other video. Let's continue this one.
Me, that was you. I also never begged or pleaded for Gabbie to be a part of the show. Yes, I wanted her to be in it because she was my friend at the time. She was going through a lot of shit. A lot of people did not like her, still don't like her, but I was her friend and I wasn't seeing through the bullshit that everybody else was picking up on. And as a supportive friend, I wanted to give her this opportunity to be on a show that has thousands of fans and the opportunity to be on this platform that has like a bill.
So this has nothing to do with nonverbals, but I'm just processing this as well as I'm hearing it and you're hearing it. I don't know if you're hearing this for the first time, but I am at least. So this does make more sense in context than what Gabbie was saying, where somebody came to her and was just begging her to come onto the show. That doesn't seem realistic. Gabbie's not as relevant as she would like to believe herself to be. So for somebody to beg her to be on a show seems a little bit more far-fetched than somebody who was her friend and wanted her to be on the show, so he asked her to be on the show. That does seem more realistic. This does not have anything to do with body language. This is just kind of playing with the narratives that are working here and trying to figure stuff out. Let's continue on to see what else his body language says.
And a lot of respect towards it. So, excuse me for giving you this opportunity, hiring you on a project that means so much to me. So, I'm sorry that I was being a good friend and inviting you to be a part of something bigger, but go ahead, live in your delusional world. I'm sure it's comfy there for you. You also claim that ADHD...
Lot of snark coming from Joey during this, which I understand if you are creating a big project and somebody is being terrible during that big project, there's going to be some snarky feelings. That's understandable. But his narrative so far is making more sense logically. Just speaking logically during this, his nonverbal communication was so overt during that time. He's very in control of that with the overt confusion that people will do to emphasize the absurdity of things. In this area, this is a more lighthearted area. If you want a more gruesome or dark area to see that applied, go and watch the Stephanie Lazarus video. She uses this same like, oh, this is so absurd kind of expression cluster and gesture cluster to be able to really communicate that. So he's using it there, but it's a much more lighthearted situation. But his side of things is making more sense to me than what Gabbie's side of things was. But that might change. Let's continue.
ADHD is the biggest reason that you acted the way you did on set. But just so you know, half the cast had ADHD and did not act in the way that you did. So I'm sorry, but that is not an excuse. Then you go in.
He is correct. There are many people that do actually have ADHD, especially as the psychology and the study of the mind and understanding how people process and think is improving over the years. More and more people are finding out that there are more complexities to most people than initially thought. So the idea that many people have ADHD, that's probably true. Many people do have ADHD. And the fact that he stated that that doesn't excuse you is also true. Now, I think that there are more factors to play in Gabbie Hanna's psyche than just ADHD. I think that she's slowly becoming unhinged from what reality is presenting itself as, just from what I'm seeing. This is not based off of a psychologist's review. I am not a psychologist. I am not diagnosing her on any level or anything like that. So just to be clear with that, this is just me kind of talking and understanding what the drama is doing. So it seems as though Gabbie's slowly losing control of everything and she's becoming frantic, and this is a classic breakdown moment. It feels as if Gabbie is heading towards a very substantial, and I mean substantial, kind of worrisome breakdown. So far we're seeing some red flags just from her personality and how she's been handling things recently and how her behavior has been altering. So something's going on with Gabbie just well beyond the ADHD that she's saying it is. There's something that's happening. So that's neither here nor there for Joey's video, but it is something that I'm picking up on. Let's continue with his.
Into your eating disorder and the whole food situation. Every single person is sent a form days before we start filming to get people's medical information and their allergies and any.
So he's showing this and he's saying this. He's synchronized while saying it. And along with that, there are other people that can affirm that that form was sent out. This is the form that I was talking about that Gabbie was called out for not filling out. So this is absolute evidence that Gabbie was lying in the instance where she was saying, well, they just didn't even care about my dietary decisions or needs. That's simply not true. She didn't care enough to make them known or heard or cared about. That's the difficulty there. If she had filled out the form, I'm sure things would have gone better, but I don't know that. Obviously, that's just an assumption, so let's see.
Food restrictions. Gabbie didn't fill this out until the day we were on set. Miss Gabbie, can we do a little BTS moment? How is she? Look at, she's got her yellow hair on.
We're doing
She's practicing her script.
filling out my medical information.
You're supposed to fill this out beforehand so we can get everything prepared and make sure that we have your dietary restrictions accounted for. So I don't understand how you expect things to be done for you when you don't do the work yourself. And I also would like to just take a minute to defend Daniel, who literally went above and beyond.
So Joey fidgets with this bandana around his neck a fair bit, and this is a manipulator. Anytime that your hands quite literally manipulate something, it's called a manipulator in nonverbal communication. So it's a manipulator, and in this area it does seem to be perhaps a pacifier or a self-soothing gesture. People will fiddle with their collars, they'll fiddle with their clothes, their hair, or anything to be able to help pacify agitation is quite literally its service. And as I said in the previous video, and I think I'll bring it up regularly because some people have this question a fair bit, if you see a behavior that's repeated regularly, then that could be seen as a pacifying behavior. So for instance, regularly fidgeting with a bandana or clothing or hair or bouncing a foot or biting fingernails, so on and so forth, it's an indicator of agitation because its service is to pacify said agitation. So I hope that makes sense. So we're seeing that pop up. So there's something that's going on with Daniel during this area. Let's see what it is.
For not only you, but everybody else on set, he had a million things going on, and yet he still managed to have the time to go to Whole Foods and get you your 3 healthy meals that were so specific of like exactly what you needed, and yet you still didn't even eat them. You literally just left them out to rot. So what was it that you were actually trying to do, Gabbie? Was it that you actually needed the healthy meals, or were you...
So yeah, this little reach up here, this is an agitation indicator for him. It's showing us that he has strong emotions centered around what he's talking about there. And that is understandable with the words that he's saying. If this producer or co-producer, this important person in the crew, if he's willing to go and get groceries or meals for Gabbie during this time while being very busy, then that is an indicator of somebody who is good at their job on the crew. That's very true, and that goes directly against what Gabbie said of everybody just not caring at all about her and how she's the victim. And so during this time, I would believe his synchronized body language and the testimonies of other people that have kind of backed up what he's saying here than I would Gabbie's more chaotic body language that we saw in the other video. But let's see how this all plays out.
You're just trying to be difficult? Because I think you were just trying to be difficult and throw around some power. So
when he's saying because, you could see a very strong indicator of disgust come out around his nose, as it usually does, indicating that he has some negative feelings towards Gabbie and her behaviors towards the crew, which we understand why.
Things took a turn on set after day 2 when she refused.
So you can see during this time there's a large burst of nonverbal activity all across Joey's body, across his face, his gestures, everything is showing a heightened sense of activity. So something is happening here that is different from everywhere else. And that is also synchronizing with his words where he's talking about, then, we got to the shooting day, so on and so forth. And that is showing that Joey is still synchronized. That's good to know because a person who continues being synchronized throughout their entire statement, especially one that seems to be fairly unscripted, I'm not sure if he had notes or anything with this, it's not showing up for him, so maybe he's a great on-screen talent and it's not showing up, or maybe he memorized it, or it's completely unscripted. something along those lines. Regardless, to be able to see that synchronization across both channels of verbal and nonverbal, that's good to see. That does push towards authenticity rather than deceit. So far, Joey's doing quite well with being what seems to be pretty authentic. So let's continue.
Used to come back the next day at her call time. So this is when everything kind of climaxed in her being on set and showing her true colors. It was the end of day 2. It's about 4 a.m. We're all getting out of our clothes and getting ready to go home. And the PA comes to let us all know our call times for tomorrow so we can be ready for our hair and makeup and get day 3 started. So the PA tells Gabbie a time that...
So during that time, that entire cluster that he just showed where it's day 3 starting, that's all forced behavior, which by reverse psychology kind of implies that everything's going badly. So if you're forcing something that overtly, that means that the negative should be implied, which is likely the case in this instance. So nothing's going well, and I'm betting that it's about to get worse.
That she has to arrive the next day, and she completely refuses, cusses out the PA, and tells him that she refuses to come. So, of course, we reach out to her manager, let him know that, hey, Gabbie is refusing to work under the contract that she signed, and that she needs to show up on set. And her manager was extremely apologetic and was basically saying that he was going to drop her after this. Like, it was extremely unprofessional. Like, he's had so many issues with her. And so she showed up on set the next day, but the director and I met. And
so something interesting happened with his nonverbal communication while he's speaking about the manager of Gabbie. His tone's dropping and his pitch is dropping, and he also has a little bit less eye contact than usual during this time. Something's happening around that. I don't know that what he's saying here is the complete truth as to how the manager said things. It might be embellished a bit. Regardless, it seems as though his subconscious is letting us know that he's not fully confident in his words. When you hear tone and pitch drop that way, it can be an indicator of sadness, intense rage, or a lack of certainty. And in these areas, considering the context, it's likely not intense rage, and it's likely not sadness, so it could be seen as an indicator of maybe not feeling as secure or sincere as what he's presenting it to be, aka he probably bent those facts just a little bit to help fit his narrative a bit, but we don't know that for sure, so let's keep watching.
And we're like, okay, this is not it. We need to kill her off the show as soon as possible so it can be a peaceful set, because she was causing so much chaos that we just needed to get rid of her. Now, there have been some cases where we do scripted death if someone has a heart out and they can't make it through the whole filming process, and that actually included Tana this season because she had to go to an award show. So we had planned that Tana would die in episode 5, and with the whole issue with Gabbie, we're like, we can't have her for one more episode. Let's get rid of her. So we planned the double death, which a lot of people were upset about, but now you know the real reason why there was a double death. The next day, I took Gabbie aside and...
So with the weird overt, let's get rid of her, that seems as though it's compensating for something. Again, he's seeming overtly happy or joyful or gung-ho, however you want to say that. But then why is he doing that there, if not to be able to mask a little bit more turbulence behind that, which I suppose would make sense. If he was actually good friends with Gabbie, then having to remove her from the show for her bad behavior would be very uncomfortable and could be compensated or coped with by an over exuberance, so to speak, a display that's over the top of happiness or something along those lines. So that does make sense in context as well. Let's continue.
Of course, she had a million things to say. She had all these excuses of what was going on with her and how she's the victim. And I'm in producer headspace. Like, I need to make sure that this production goes as smoothly as possible. There's millions of dollars on the line, and I am not about to let this girl fuck this up for me. So I'm just nodding my head like, yeah, girl, don't worry, everything's fine, like, we're good, like, it's all good, like, I totally understand what you're going through. But in my head, I'm like, this girl is screwing me over so hardcore. She's made my life a living hell on this set, made things way harder than they need to be. But you know what? I'm just gonna suck it up so she doesn't screw anything else up anymore. And that's what I did. And I am proud of the way that I handled my...
Something's odd around here. He has a strange style that he's presenting this in, and he's telling us obviously that he was wearing a polite mask while interacting with a cast member, in this case Gabbie. That's not unheard of. I'm actually, if this went as he's presenting it, which I can't tell if he's really lying, when he says that, that's what I did, his voice goes up dramatically, pitch goes up, and strain on his vocal cords go up dramatically. He also hunches up, and he has a small micro movement no of his head. That kind of pushes me to believe that that's not exactly what he did, or not exactly how he handled it, or something around that isn't what he just presented. And for him to say that he handled it so coolly and collectedly is not super likely, especially considering the stress that he was under. Maybe he did. His body language doesn't give me any certainty on that, but I mean, I think the story is still the same regardless of how well he handled this conversation that they're talking about now. So let's see if he comes back to it and adds anything to it, any detail or anything along those lines.
Because I could have gone off on her very hard, but I don't think that would have been a good result on set. I obviously didn't want her walking off, and I had to do what I had to do to protect me and protect the show. So if that's fake, Gabbie, well, it's what I had to do.
So from my experience on sets and with filming videos and working with clients and working with cast and so on and so forth, it does make sense that he would want to keep things running smoothly that way. It is really upsetting for there to be a large argument, especially between one of the head of the crew members, so the producer or something along those lines, and one of the cast. It really can add some discord in the ranks, so to speak, and it can really off-put an entire show just from one of those displays. It's not unheard of, but I do understand his desire to just keep things moving forward, and if he did have to put this fake smile, fake politeness forward during that time, then yes, he's quite right, that is fake. Gabbie's right, that would be technically a lie, and this would be one of those instances that it would make more sense to lie than to not. Let's keep watching.
Then her video goes into her apology and my fake accepting her apology. So same with before, where we're on set, it's like I have to do what I have to do to protect this project, and by accepting your apology was me protecting the project. You're pretty unstable and I don't know what to expect from you, so I'd rather pretend that we're good than actually deal with the craziness that you bring. I don't think you realize this, Gabbie. Maybe you do, but you're scary, and you make it very hard for people to be honest with you. And if I was honest with you, nothing would have changed. You're so delusional, and you think that you were always going to be the victim. Even months after, when I finally did share with you my frustration of you on set.
All that I can say in this point is that non-verbally speaking, he's being synchronized, which indicates that he at least believes what he's saying in regards to Gabbie. There's no reason for me to see deceit, and I'm not going to read into anything that I see. So from what I can see, considering his baseline and his behaviors now, he's being very synchronized with calling out Gabbie and her behaviors. That's as far as the signs can see right now. Let's continue.
That there was no getting through to you. There was always just an excuse. So maybe understand that the reason why all these people who are fake friends just don't know how to cut it off with you because you're scary. And you don't make it easy for people to be honest with you. Also, I want to share a story with you guys about a week after we wrapped up shooting. And by the way, after she was killed off the show, everything went so smooth. Like, everybody had clear skin. We were all thriving. The season got progressively better, and we were all just in good spirits. It was literally a negative energy had been removed from the set, and we were all so happy and positive. But anyways, a week later, we had to do...
To go along with that, he is synchronized from what you can see, but some other things that you don't see, or maybe aren't noticing or really picking up on, is that he's also starting to bounce a little bit as he's talking. So he's talking about things getting better on the set, and his gestures are opening up, he's smiling more, genuinely reaching his eyes, and then he's also starting to bounce a little bit on the bed. Now, during that time, that would be considered a gravity-defying gesture, and gravity-defying gestures or expressions can indicate positivity. In fact, they regularly do. So in this area, that's showing us that not only is he saying that things got better, but he's feeling that things got better, which means that he believes that things got better. So we should continue to believe him because he's being synchronized with his nonverbal communication. That's what we're seeing so far. Let's continue. There's only a little bit more.
The press shoot where we shot the billboard and the promo shoots and stuff, and Of course, she just had to make that just as difficult. She was complaining about her call time because even though she was contractually obligated to come to this day, she had a gym appointment that she couldn't miss. So she was trying to basically be on
When he's talking about the gym appointment, a little bit of disgust and contempt comes into the side of his face there, just showing a little bit more of Joey's nonverbal seepage of his actual emotion towards that event, of being contemptuous and disgusted with it. Understandably. Let's continue.
set as least amount of time as possible, and she kind of was just thinking like, oh, I can just get my makeup done, shoot out, and go. But that's not how it works. There's so many rotating things. There's tons of other people. It's, again, not always just about you, Gabbie. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's just the world doesn't revolve around you. She's just so entitled to feel like her time is more valuable than others. Meanwhile, again, Colleen has a newborn baby that she's breastfeeding on set and managed to make time to be there. But your gym appointment is way, 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 way more important. I'm so sorry. You have to go to the gym, Gabbie. That's way more important than the contract that you signed to be here for the full time that is required. But because things weren't going her way.
Man, that is some sass that he's throwing there. Yeah, and rightfully so. For Gabbie to walk onto a set, a TV show, could be argued. It's a YouTube TV, it's YouTube Premium, so it's kind of like, it's a TV show, right? To walk onto, let's say, a TV show set, and just expect that all of this is going to center around you, that everything's going to communicate clearly, that you're not going to have to put out any effort, and that they're all going to only bend to you and what you want and your desires and needs and so on and so forth, is hyper unrealistic. It is very entitled to be able to think that. It doesn't even matter if you're an A-list star. There are other people that need to have attention given to them. So it just doesn't matter. And this isn't unheard of, especially as people become more and more popular. They have a little bit more difficulty controlling their own ego, and they become very self-centered. And people have pointed out that Gabbie has some narcissistic tendencies. As I said, not a psychologist, that's just what other people are pointing out, and I would happen to agree that it does seem to fall into a lot of those personality categories, to be narcissistic. So for her to think that everything's just going to revolve around her side of things, it won't happen. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen. I don't know. Let's keep watching.
Way on set. She had a major meltdown, and I'm hoping to God that I can find the audio or some video form to really show you guys how much she blew up on this poor woman who was just telling her time of when she was ready on set. It was too much for Gabbie, and she called the woman a dumb cunt and then stormed off set, and we didn't get to finish her promo shoot. Until next time, I'll see you next time. Good damn bye.
On that last part, that was the end of the video. Like I said, that's not the whole video. Go watch the whole video, and that will add some more details to it. Go watch the Gabbie video if you want to know this scenario. And at that very end, with Gabbie saying that terrible thing to a crew member, that has been backed up by other people who heard it as well. There were witnesses of that event. Gabbie, get your poop in a group. I don't know. There's not a better way to say that. Throughout all of this, it does seem as though there was a drama queen and everything just went way off the rails. Joey, throughout this, non-verbally speaking, was quite synchronized throughout the entirety of the video. It lined up with his baseline. He didn't seem to be putting on any sort of show. There were no anomalies that would point me in the direction of deceit, which is a good indicator of somebody either who is authentic and being truthful, or very good at lying. And in this instance, I mean, technically speaking, he has just as much drive to be both. If he's genuine, then that's good, and it just shows that he was being a good director and good crew member and cast member and so on and so forth. But if he was a terrible person, which hasn't been backed up by other people, if he was a terrible person, then he's a fantastic liar. So in this entire instance, I would say that Gabbie needs to just maybe do a little bit more introspection, maybe not put herself in positions that she's going to handle so poorly. I know that she says that she's working on stuff. I know that she says she has ADHD. I think a lot of people are working on stuff, and I think a lot of people have their own mental struggles that they're working through. Never excuses terrible behavior to the people around you, especially if you're not willing to go back and apologize for said behavior. In this instance, Gabbie did not offer an apology that was suitable. It was an apology with strings attached. And when you offer an apology and demand the other person apologize back to you, that indicates that you don't feel that you should be apologizing as much as they do. She made that very clear in her video. His explanation appropriately counteracted what she said and was backed up by other people and other evidence. So my opinion out of all of this is that he was right and she was wrong. That's the long and short of this one. I am very tired. I'm not gonna lie, folks. I have been going at it for a bit. There's a lot of stuff happening here, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up and relax for the rest of the day. If you liked this video and you have any other drama or any other true crime or anything that you would like me to be able to look at and react to and analyze, leave them in the comments below. I would love to be able to see it. I'm always open to suggestions. If enough people request a case or a thing, an analysis, then I'll likely get around to it. If you would like to be able to see more videos like this one, go ahead and hit subscribe. Hit the like button, that's the other thing that you do, and the bell notification lets you know things sooner, apparently. It'll also let you know if I do a live stream that I don't announce, and you can participate in that before it disappears on Patreon. This video is a mess. I hope you enjoyed it regardless. Thanks for everything, but without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome, as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.